Hello dear friends, welcome back to our very special study on the book Action and Reaction. This week we are studying chapter 1. In actuality, it's not so much a study as much it is like highlights, right Leo? It's just highlights in each chapter. So this week we're giving a highlights on the chapter that's entitled A Light in the Darkness in this book Action and Reaction. And it's interesting, as we were discussing this whole chapter is basically 3 characters: Andre Luiz, Ilario, and the Druso. We would say I was trying to think of saying the word head mentor, the main guy, the head honcho of Mansão Paz, where Andre Luiz and Ilario are doing their internship, if we can call it an internship, right? Because him and Ilario, they go there to study what?
The law of action and reaction. And
law of cause and effect. So it's not unlike, here in the physical earth we go and we're in, medical school or some type of school where we go and we do an internship in pharmacology or, a specialty in, cardiology or some other aspect. We specialize. So, it's amazing to think about that. But Leo, when Druso, he really starts out this chapter for us and he begins to give us many different ideas, one of which he mentions, and we mentioned also to you, dear viewers, that he starts out describing about what Mansão Paz is. And it's interesting because when he starts out, when we learn about Nosso Lar in the book Nosso Lar, Andre Luiz, there's this beautiful depiction, of the gardens and everything, but the way that they begin to depict Mansão Paz is where it's located.
Right. It's interesting because if we want to Google it or do some kind of search on it, he kind of mentions it in a very nice way. Situated in the lower zones, the institute was similar to Saint Bernard's Monastery.
And that's usually people can Google.
Google it, and if you'll be able to see it, the monastery. But instead of the scenery and around the snow and mountains, it was actually a dark and very dense fog. Where he describes it, and it's interesting that, to have a place of rescue in such a dark place, and that they were, trying to help others, and Andre Luiz and Ilario doing this internship. So it's an interesting thing that he kind of describes the whole thing, and we can again go back and Google it and try to find the pictures. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, of St. Bernard's Monastery. Yeah, they use that analogy of where it's located, and it's so interesting because when we think about the title of the chapter, Light in the Darkness, they really are like a light in the darkness. I mean, they're situated in an area, and this is basically what the chapter 1 talks about, is that they are surrounded in this particular time period. They happen to be enduring this hurricane, sort of like a storm, but instead of being a storm of snow and rain and hail, it's of actual souls that are just being blown about. And basically, in chapter 1, they're looking outside Mansão Paz and they're seeing these horrifying images. And Andre Luiz and Ilario are both so taken aback with horror in a sense because they turn to Druso and say, well, what's going on? But the beauty in this is that we see that Druso doesn't turn and say, oh, those are bad souls or bad people, they're suffering in their own hell. It's a very loving aspect.
Very, very loving aspect. And we'll find out as well, not giving away too much, that Druso was an individual who was in that, in a tough position at once, and he came to this location to be rescued as well. And you start working from doing the small things that we can think, in real life or here, incarnated life, that we think is so small, so pitiful, but he started that way. Now he's the quote-unquote, as you mentioned, the minister or the person who is in charge of this location, and there he is helping this other individual. And one of the highlights that we can get from this as well, that besides that he looking at these other individuals and saying, okay, they're brothers and sisters, But he also said we need to be careful that if we admit them to this location, in this position, they will harm the environment that we have created within Mansão Pai. So it's a beautiful thing that he's able to present this wisdom to us on how we have to be careful even with the rescue. And this idea of just going there and help and doing this, no, there's got to be some kind of guidance. There's got to be some kind of method to help these individuals.
And that's why Druso says, order is the basis of charity. So it's interesting because perhaps some people think, well, this is only applicable to our lives here in the physical realm because, well, that's the spirit realm and this is here. No, even here in the physical realm, we can have order, we can be balanced and organized when we go into our charity works as well. We utilize prayer before we go to these particular charity events. Why? Because everything is vibration. Granted, living in the spirit realm, some things are more visible to us because we don't have the veil of this, physical life. But even there and here, that vibration plays a part. So it's important for us. We learn in the Genesis, it's here, the Genesis, we learn that prayer, Kardec tells us, when we pray can actually create a shield around ourselves of protection, because it's all about energy and vibration. One other highlight, Leo, I wanted to bring, and it's on page 15 for those of you who want to read this. We recommend you read the entire book naturally. But on page 15, when Druso clarifies, because Andre Luiz talks about, all these people are suffering, you can hear cries or screams. And oftentimes we look at people that are suffering and we think, oh, they're crying and they're really truly suffering. But Druso brings a really interesting perspective on suffering, and he says that despair is like a state of dementia to which souls fling themselves in explosions of intemperance and rebelliousness. And he goes on to say that doesn't count as payment in the divine courts. In other words, just because we see someone crying after a wrong that they have committed doesn't mean that now they're paying it off. That they go through this period of readjustment to begin to pay off. That the actual crying and feeling the pain and anguish from our wrongdoings isn't actually paying back. This idea of law of cause and effect, we know that, right, Leo, God is not a punishing God. It's all about educating, right? Like a child who does something wrong.
And we see this throughout the many literatures that we have to go back and we have to readjust to ourselves to also readjust the situation that we have created, the harms that we have created. It's not a matter of punishment, but it's a matter of an opportunity that God gives us to make amends to the situation that we have created. And also, again, remembering that it's the same thing that we would wish others to do for whatever harm they have caused us, to make amends, to really establish the laws of God in between ourselves, not only out there or not only within, but really between one another in our lives. So it's a beautiful thing that he explains very wisely this idea of what the suffering there, it's not really rescuing anybody. And
the beautiful thing, what we mentioned in the beginning, was that the perspective that Druso brings when he doesn't look at these people with the eye of, condemning them, but he brings with understanding. He says, these brothers and sisters have found themselves in that situation because of what the seeds they have sown in their lives. And he also explains that, these aren't helpless souls that never were educated. These souls that find themselves in that situation knew better and still did not do what they knew was right, basically. So they're suffering not because God has come and punished them, but because of the law of cause and effect, the laws of God. When we transgress them, because they're written in our conscience, we have that heavy conscience, whether we realize it or not. We become unbalanced. So when he looks at them, he doesn't look at them saying, they're horrible, but just that they're in a transitory state. Certainly. And when they are ready to rehabilitate themselves, much like Andre Luiz did in El Solar, when he finally, after 8 years of suffering in the lower realms, and he did that small prayer, that was enough for him to lift up out of his little hell, or big hell, and begin his redemptive process.
Certainly, yes. And we see here that in many cases, this awareness, to get this awareness, it takes time. Not necessarily when you get to be aware of your situation, that you're in a process of redemption or making amends, as we mentioned here, to the situation or whatever has caused. So the awareness is one step. Well, let's say the awakening is the first step, The awareness is that second step, and then you have to put whatever you learn or their awareness in action. And that usually, or most of the time, is when we ask to reincarnate and apply what we have learned. And that's what we will see developing as well in some of the next chapters as we develop this talk as well, this work.
Leo, I kind of just wanted to, as part of our last highlight, you know, it's so significant, this particular chapter, the name of the chapter, A Light in the Darkness. You know, we can discuss about all the metaphoric reasons why it's called this. You know, one thing for us that comes to my mind and our mind is that, you know, it's like that lighthouse. That no matter how dark and stormy it is out there, God is like that eternal lighthouse that shines that light, however far, however small, to that ship that's lost at sea can mean everything. To find that little bit of light is enough just to guide you back to shore. It's metaphoric because this chapter begins to unravel this light in the darkness that Mansal Paz is.
It is certainly, yes, true. If we also, as we were discussing earlier, it's one of those things that, you know, if you put a small light in you know, trying to put that small light on when it's daylight outside, you won't see much.
Right.
It won't make a much
Right.
You won't notice. However, at night when it's pitch dark, that will make a huge difference. Or little candlelight, for example, that will make a huge difference. And here in this book, compared to perhaps some of the work that God is doing around the universe, it's very small, but there is the light in the darkness that we're mentioning here. That in this is for us, for our lives, for our day-to-day lives, where we can apply this to our lives. Perhaps when we're applying these studies with a friend, not directly saying, okay, do this, do that, but also being charitable, being nice, and showing this little light to our brothers and sisters. And who, again, I like to emphasize this because it's a progress, it's a road that we're taking here, that we're partaking here, that we'll see more of this as well in the next chapter. And I guess at this point we'll leave for the next chapters.
Absolutely, and it's just this idea of hope. It really is that even that little light is enough for us to have hope, and let us continue to think about, let it meander in our minds and marinate this idea of hope on this continuum of life. Until we check us out next time in our next videos. We wish you the best. All the blessings.
Thank you.